Find out what it is that you love to do and go do it. If you love to write, write about it. Share your experience, share resources. If you like to tell stories, have someone point a camera and start telling your story. If you like to sing, sing and dance some truth. The great storytellers of our entire life have all been great musicians and movie makers and people that give us the truth. Whatever it is you like to do, if you want to farm, farm. There's something each of us has that's a genius in us. And if we all say, how do I apply my genius to making the world a better place for everybody and healing the planet within the flow of my own natural genius? If you're a person that likes to help people and you've got medical skills, go help people with your medical skills. We all have a gift to offer. But ultimately, what I'm pointing to is that if we teach people how to have a dream and how to set up realistically achievable goals, and we might have woken up to the fact that we are one family that not only needs each other, but we have a deep and intimate need for nature.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is...
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Paul Chek, the American fitness expert, health consultant, and author. You founded the Chek Institute 25 years ago with the mission to revolutionize the industry using a whole system approach to fitness and well-being. Your unique methodology for movement and wellness has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Glamour Magazine, and Men's Health. You have worked as a consultant with organizations like the Chicago Bulls and the U.S. Air Force, and you have written 11 books, including the bestseller How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, which details the fundamental pillars of diet and movement to create long-term well-being. Paul, welcome to London Real.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm excited to be here. I love your show.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you. It's been years and years people have been emailing us to say to have you on. And we've had your students here like Elliot Hulse. And so it's great to finally do this. It's weird that I'm from San Diego and now I'm in London talking to you, but you know, it's all good. You know, so much stuff to talk about, Paul, but I thought maybe we jump into it and get your thoughts, maybe from a holistic perspective on the last 4 months of this crazy world, you know, from the COVID-19 to the lockdown to even some of the unrest that we're seeing. You know, what's the Paul Chek view on what just happened to us as a species?
Well, you know, if there's one person out there who I think has a real handle on this, it's Zach Bush, MD. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, he was actually our guest last week. So
I think Zach Bush has done the best job of encapsulating what's really going on. I think there's a couple of factors involved. One, I don't think anyone needs to more than a couple of brain cells holding hands to know that we have traumatized the planet quite badly and are continuing to do so. You know, the oceans are dying. There's many places in the world now where fishermen can't catch fish. The Great Barrier Reef is dying. 20 years ago, I saw a video from a rare native population that had never ever been before been filmed. And they let a BBC film guy come because they had a message. And they were talking about how the snow's not coming in the winter and how the tree line is receding from the top of the mountains. And this particular tribe of people had been in that one place for over 1,000 years. And they were sending a warning to the white man that you're killing the planet and you need to be extremely careful. And you see that we're abusing the use of fossil fuels. We have advanced technologies such as zero-point technologies that the government confiscates the patents of and suppresses the owners of. So we continue to traumatize the environment with, fossil fuels. And you have, Donald Trump trying to remove nature reserves constantly for more fracking and more drilling, which is clearly a corporate agenda. I think one of our real issues, aside from another thing that is that we've been using organophosphates and chemicals like Roundup since after the Second World War. And we've really, best expert estimates say that we only have about 55 to 65 years of topsoil left. I recently saw a report from a group of entomologists, and the title of it was something like Armageddon may be near or here. And what they'd found is one of the entomologists doing research found that there was a drastic reduction in bug traffic, and it concerned him so much he connected to other entomologists, bug experts around the world, and they did a combined study. And after their study, they concluded that in the last 50 years, bug traffic had dropped 75%, which means that the sex organs of our planet are dying. Rudolf Steiner said in the late 1800s, human life depends on two things, and when they reach a critically low level, life will cease to exist as we know it. And those two things are bees and trees. We have a worldwide epidemic of bees dying off everywhere, which has been tracked to electromagnetic pollution and the use of farming chemicals. And we're clearing the rainforests and cutting forests down at unprecedented rates, all for what? Corporate crops. And so if you look at the research on exosomes and viruses, and so really, I think what we're seeing is that Mother Earth is sending out a cry, a warning call to say, you must change quickly or your days are potentially numbered, because she has an immune system and it's already been going off, right? Whenever you get sick, you alternate between hot and sweating and cold and shivering. And so we're seeing these alternations from in hot to cold. And many places are saying they don't even seem to have seasons anymore. And my father, by the way, who's a farmer and has been a farmer for, since I was a little kid, told me that when I told him about this report on the bug traffic and I sent it to him, he said, you remember when you were a kid, the mosquitoes were so plentiful, they would practically carry you away. He said, rarely ever do I see a mosquito on the farm anymore. And he also attributes that to farming chemicals. Psychologically, if you look at this, if you look at the universal principles written by Arnold Patent, in one of them, he makes a very profound statement. He says, if you don't like what's happening in your life, look carefully at what you're choosing unconsciously. So what people forget is as Bruce Lipton shows, the unconscious mind is about 1 million times more powerful in its information carrying capacity than the conscious mind. And I think we're really in a situation where people have been so corporatized, and J. Paul Getty said, far better is it to get 1% from 100 men than 100% from one man. So I think the corporate elites, which have turned our democratic governments into corporate headquarters, have pushed the system so far with predatory lending, advanced marketing technologies, the use of phones, and they've gotten people to a situation where they're living so intensely to try to make enough money to pay off all their bills. They're kind of like everybody's turned into a college student that gets out of college, is wet behind the ears, and has a $100,000 college loan before they even make their first paycheck. And so I think people are actually at a deep level burning out, and there's a sort of a cry of the soul for a rebalancing and a reconnection to nature, and to have family time and to reconnect. And I think the whole concept of texting and constantly using computers to talk to each other has gotten out of proportion to great extremes. I've seen husband and wife sitting in airports side by side texting each other, and I've seen this kind of thing many times in coffee shops where people that are supposed to be in an intimate relationship aren't even talking. So we've risen so far high up into the realm of the mind that we've actually lost touch with what Jung called the self, or that which supports us, allows us to live and integrates us, such as earth, water, the sun, air, the elements that have to be in balance for life to live. And so at the end of the day, I think that we're ultimately all sort of paralyzed and afraid because the magnitude of the problems in so many areas, from education to banking to the military, use of military funds, to environmental policies, to political manipulation, to manipulation on the truth of vaccinations. If you look at the number numerologically 2020, you have an inner consciousness and an outer consciousness. So 2 is subject object. You're listening to me right now. I'm the object of your awareness. Within you is the subject. I'm listening and engaging with you. You're the object of my awareness, but within me is the subject. Within ourselves, there's a person we talk to when we are frustrated or happy or whatever. We have an inner life with ourself. That's one of the 2s. 2, subject object inside, subject object outside. 2020, those 2 meet each other. And what it does is it creates an energetic mirror where we can actually see everything we've been hiding inside of ourselves, in our shadow and in our unconscious. So I think it's the great revealing of everything that people have pacified with themselves to be distracted from dealing with the real issues of the world. So we're finding out the truth of the politicians. We're finding out the truth of the medical system. We're finding out what people's true motives are. We're seeing who's playing games and manipulation. We're learning about how dangerous the media is. I think at the end of the day, it's a soft purge that's giving us an opportunity to wake up, grow up, wake up, clean up, grow up, and show up before issues get much worse. And we're also seeing that our freedom of speech is under tremendous threat, and our constitutional rights are under tremendous threat because people like Bill Gates and others are stepping in to enforce their own agenda, which they sugarcoat like they're really caring for human beings, but it's ultimately directed towards making more and more and more and more billions and trillions of dollars. But that's exactly the corporate influence on government and on people that's led us into this trouble. So it's time for people to actually wake up and be brave enough to look at both sides of the argument.
Yeah, well, we've kind of perturbed the system in the past 3 or 4 months. And like you say, you can kind of see things we couldn't normally see when it's kind of business as usual. So like you said, you see kind of behind the curtain briefly of media, of the medical industry, of politics, of marketing, of all these machines and forces that were kind of running very, very structured. And if you're looking, you kind of say, well, wait a second, all of a sudden I see censorship here, I see this happening here. The question is are we going to notice this, or is it kind of, let's get back to normal? Do you see any signs that this can cause a change?
Well, I do on a number of levels. The problem is that people like Zach Bush and the people that really have the knowledge to help us make the transformation, whether it be people like Bruce Lipton, Eckhart Tolle, enlightened scientists, enlightened environmentalists, all their wisdom is being confiscated off the internet at a rapid pace. So what's happening is the public is continuing to be programmed by the people that have the very agendas that led us into the problem and who have a lot of money. So until we actually create a freedom of speech law that's enforced, we're having the same problem that happens in farming. When you start killing diversity and go to monocropping, you now destroy the diversity in the soil. You destroy the diversity of the microorganisms. You destroy the diversity of which animals can live and feed there and do their magic. So what we're doing is we're being brought into control by entities that have a very, very big financial agenda and making sure we see, do, act, think, and conform the way they want us to, which is like, at one time we had 179 species of apples. I think in England they had up to like 179 species of apples, but now they only farm on 4 on an average. So when you do that, I mean, imagine what would happen if you went to the zoo and you got rid of 90% of the animals there and thought that you were doing everybody a favor. Well, people would have a lot less, children would have no idea what nature really holds around the world. So what's happening with all this censoring and monitoring is we're getting rid of voices And we're getting rid of voices that are extremely wise, that have a lifetime of experience and tremendous skill, that are often far more knowledgeable, deep and wide than the ones that are getting the microphone or the television. And so we're actually being pulled deeper into a very, very dangerous illusion, which is driven by money and by false interests and by false pretensions of we're trying to take care of you, all that stuff, to the point where people stand up for their freedom of speech and their rights as citizens and their need for diversification, and we start giving airtime to the people on both sides of the fence. We're never going to make intelligent decisions, and we're always going to need to be bailed out by some big daddy in the sky, which puts us right back to who's the only people that can bail you out when you're in a major world crisis due to earthquakes, pandemics, etc. It's people like Bill Gates and so-called government, which is now just corporations, because we've broken the very rule that Adam Smith, considered to be the first economist, warned in his original book and his teachings. He said, it is extremely dangerous to let large companies or corporate interests into government. He said, in my life, every meeting I've ever been into with large corporations was a bunch of men talking about how to get more money out of people with no concern as to the effects it had on them as human beings. And we now have dangerous corporate influences from Monsanto and oil companies and drug companies and vaccine companies and food manufacturing companies. If we don't level the playing field and start listening to wise people, well, I don't think you need to be a genius. Just take what you thought COVID was. Imagine when people don't have enough money, they start getting violent, they get scared. It will not only give them the reason to impose military law, which is exactly what they want to do, because that's all the military industrial complex profiting from that. It's the control mongers trying to get more control, but it can make people so violent that there can be a massive death in major cities all over the world that would be more dangerous than most wars. We could end up with Vietnam level death right in our own countries due to the fact that we've been so manipulated, so lied to, and now are so scared to death because, you know, people don't know how to eat. They don't know how to find water. You talk about cities. Look, 5 corporations provide 90% of the food for most of the world. When I was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division, and we were doing battlefield training, one of the first things they taught you is if you want to control an enemy, the first thing you do is knock out their communications and control their food supply. The rest is easy. Well, they've knocked out our communications and they control our food supply. And so I say you better start a garden. You better figure out where you're going to get water. And we all need to stand up for our rights. And I think we should do it non-violently, of course. We should use petitions. We should use picketing. We should share our voice. But if we don't move intelligently and quickly, then Mother Earth has no chance, but she's going to have to do what she's got to do to right herself. And when you're talking about a living organism the size of a planet that's sick, I don't think you want to be in the belly of the dragon when she starts vomiting.
Yeah, well, you know, when it comes to the freedom of speech, you know, we've been having our own battles here for the past 3 months, which is why we created a completely separate platform that we've had to use to have a lot of discussions with these doctors and Nobel Prize winners and, you know, Bobby Kennedys and stuff to talk about a lot of these things because we can't do
Kennedy, there's a guy.
Yeah.
There's a truth teller.
Yeah, because we can't do it on a lot of these other social platforms and mainstream media. So we're having those conversations. But again, I agree. That's the bedrock of us being able to have a proper debate and make intelligent policy decisions. What about the violence we're seeing, you know, in America and worldwide, and some of that division and rioting? Is that another symptom of who we are as a species, or what does Paul Chek see there?
Well, if you look at the research in consciousness studies, and people like Maslow and Jean Gebser and many others, Ken Wilber, if you take a hierarchy of values as a structure, like Maslow's hierarchy of values or Claire Graves' hierarchy of values, But if you look at the structure stages of consciousness, which is the levels of consciousness we grow through, which if you want to think of it a simple way, when a child is born, it has no ego. It poops all over itself, pees all over itself, because it thinks everything is it. There is no differentiation. So that would be archaic consciousness. Then the child is very fused with everything. So the dog, the plants, they're all very, very alive. They don't have any programming in the way. It's kind of like a child's like on a permanent LSD journey where everything's just alive and magical, right? Yeah. So that's the magical level of consciousness. Then as the child starts getting educated, going to school, between 7 and 10 years of age, it develops the capacity for abstract thinking and progressively rational thought. And so that correlates to the mythic level of consciousness, because what do? We go to school and we get indoctrinated into stories, right? And so a myth is really a story that is used to navigate life and the mysteries of life. But at that age, we don't have any control over the stories because we don't have enough of an ego and enough knowledge to differentiate a good story from a bad story. So we go from the archaic level, which is fusion of the earth. So the body of the child, where the soul will reside, would be of the earth. Mother can't make that without food, water, air, life, breath, right? So consciousness is fused with the planet at that level. Then you go to the magical, then you go to the mythical, then you go to the mental in Gebser's model. The mental model is really about ideas. It's about images, ideas and images and concepts, ideas, image, and concepts, which are really how you tell a story, right? How you broadcast a story, but you're broadcasting it in your own theater of your mind first and then out to other people. So when you look at the fact that research shows we're supposed to transcend each level as we mature in consciousness, but we have to include them or we lose touch with very important things, okay? So look at the pandemic. What have we just talked about? We've lost touch with the earth, the archaic level. Plants and animals and nature are no longer magic. They've become objects because scientific materialism has deified the soul, has extracted the soul, has extracted the spiritual element, the connection which all the natives tribes lived by, right? Listen, look at Chief Seattle's speech to the United States government when they tried to take his land. It's mind-blowingly potent. Like, who can sell the land? Who can sell the sky? Who can sell the water? This is the home of my people. We are the land. We are the sky, right? So all the way back then, he was saying this concept of buying and selling is completely out of touch with reality. So when we're looking at the connection to the earth, the connection to nature, and then the connection to story, right? What is our story? Without our story, we have nothing. Then we get up to the mental world where we're being programmed by all these corporate entities that use our phones and spy on us constantly in our own technologies to manipulate our minds. So what's happened is we've had a breakdown, and through our education system, we've lost touch with the inner dimensions and the spiritual dimensions. We've been railroaded into scientific materialism, which has resulted in people treating nature as objects and other people as objects. So whenever you feel threatened, in some tribes, they don't even have a word for people outside of their own tribe. They become objects. Therefore, it's easy to kill them. So we've actually been educated into turning everything into an object, and if it can't be weighed or measured, it isn't real. But I tell people all the time, scientists think that way, but I ask every one of them, well, you can't weigh and measure love. How important is that in your life? And they all agree it's the most important. I said, why do you play such a dangerous game then? And so what I'm really leading to here is as people become more stressed and more fearful that they cannot feed themselves or care for themselves, or that the ability to protect their children or to make it tomorrow is at threat, they go lower in their consciousness, because survival is based on programmed behaviors, because when you're running from a lion, you don't have time to be creative. So paradoxically, as we get more stressed, we go lower and lower in our values, and we go lower and lower in our ability to think big and to see connections, and we get more and more like a scared ape or a scared animal. And if you see what a scared animal can do, it's dangerous. I mean, I've seen cows get scared and run right into barbed wire fences and slash their throats with barbed wire and literally go till they kill themselves. We see people doing the same thing. So to me, what it means is we have a lack of leadership. We have a lack of understanding. We have a lack of empathy and compassion. And we are reaching a level of fear where people begin to objectify people by religion, race, color, creed, political side. And unfortunately, I've watched many documentaries on how the Russians are using cyber hacking to manipulate us from the inside. And one of the things that they keep saying in all these documentaries, they're trying to divide us from the inside, because anytime you have chaos within a country, it's easy to take it over. So I don't know if how much of that's involved, but whoever's using the internet and using the media streams is creating such a level of uncertainty and chaos. It's turning us against each other, which is exactly how they get laws through Congress that they don't want you to know about: rape, kill, pillage. I mean, that puts your own life at risk, no matter how you do it. You know, having been a warrior for plenty of my life, no warrior wants to go risk dying unless it's something worth dying for. But when you see somebody risking their own life for something that really is secondary to the bigger picture, you have to say, what's the distraction about? What's the smokescreen about? And I think this is the most dangerous time for us to be getting caught in those kinds of things. I think it's very, very important for us to say, okay, let's get rid of ideas about race and ideas about religion. We have to focus on what do we all need right now. We all need to get the soil safe. We need to regenerate the topsoils. We got to get the chemical manufacturers out of there and start farming ethically. Nobody can live without the soil. We have to get the waterways cleaned up and the oceans healthy. And we got to make sure that people that don't have water do get water. We have to clean the airways up, and we got to stop corporations from polluting that are destroying the air. And we also have to clean the airways up of excessive satellites, spy satellites that are spying on us instead of on potential enemies. We've got to get the military to work to support the environment instead of destroying the environment. It's ridiculous. We have enough nuclear weapons to destroy the entire planet 179 times over. I mean, how silly is that? You know, Lao Tzu warned about that in the Tao Te Ching. He said, you build a big weapon, your neighbor builds a bigger one, and that goes on until you're all dead, in paraphrase. So ultimately, we all need food, we all need water, we all need shelter, we all need safety, we all need warmth, and we all need to breathe air. Right now, anything that's not focused on that and creating harmony and supporting us mutually to share resources is a step in the direction of a disaster that's so big, even the people that think they're playing this little game will be swept up in it. Donald Trump gave a $2 million stimulus package, $2 trillion. Imagine how much education and how much rehabilitation we could done to teach people how to eat, how to breathe, how to move their bodies, how to drink water, why you got to get to bed on time. I don't know if you remember when C. Everett Koop was the Surgeon General of the United States.
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay, well, when C. Everett Koop came on television on a national address, which I just happened to be watching, I normally don't watch television, he said 9 of the top 10 killers in the United States are all the products of bad lifestyle choices. If you pay more attention to what you eat and you exercise and you live a better lifestyle, you will not have these problems. They fired him the next day for saying that.
Yeah. No, you're right. I agree. If it had been more severe, it would have been easy to roll these things through, but it hasn't been. I mean, you spent your whole life in, health, fitness, well-being. What were some of the gaps, or what were some of the lessons that the pandemic showed us? Because a lot of comorbidities were the reason that the deaths happened, or at least we heard that from people on the ground. what can people learn from this? Like you said, not exactly like they're telling us this, but what can people learn to take action now?
Well, one of the big lessons is that, as Buddha taught, the one universal law is impermanence. And the ego tends to want things to be the same way. You always want your Starbucks to be there. You always want your TV show to be there. You want the supermarket to always have what you want to eat. But that's just not how the world or the universe works, right? I won't get into a deep philosophical explanation of that. But I think anyone that looks around realizes there's one true thing we have to worship, and that's impermanence. So if we get too cocky and we get too comfortable, we stop paying attention to what we're doing. So I think people have realized, wow, we're not nearly as stable as we thought we were, and we really have to pay more attention. People also realized, hey, the people that are the most susceptible are the people that aren't taking care of themselves. And a lot of the people that aren't taking care of themselves, I have tremendous empathy for, because they are the products of a media system, of a medical system, of a food delivery system, and an education system that is so corrupt that from the time they were born, they've been being told by experts that, look, when I worked with a lot of Olympic committees, I was one time in New Zealand. They just opened a new New Zealand Olympic Center for training the athletes. And my wife and I went into the cafeteria. It was brand new, just open. And it's sponsored by Nestle. I sat down and there was pamphlets sitting on the table. I thought, okay, I wonder what Nestle's telling the athletes. And one of the first things it says, did you know sugar is an important part of a well-balanced diet for any athlete? I'm like, are you out of your mind? Right? Here's something that's Candace Pert said should be classified as a type 1 drug because it's as addictive as morphine and heroin. And I'm saying to Penny, I say, look at this. This is not only a joke. This is the prostitution ring at the highest level. It's screwing our athletes up. You got McDonald's sponsoring the Olympics. You've got all this corporate garbage coming in. And then I said to Penny, have you ever met an athlete in your life that knows what a well-balanced diet is? I can't even find dietitians that know how to do that, right? So you see, people don't know any better. They've lived off of junk, and this stuff's highly addictive. That's well-researched. So their whole way of living, it goes right back to Plato's cave. The people that see the fire on the wall and they're caught in the cave, and they actually think that the illusion is really what reality is because they've been stuck in there until somebody tells them that's not true, and they have a hard time believing it. Except we're in the cave looking at the television screen and the phone, believing that it's true. And then when it comes, it completely disrupts the I feel bad that so many people have never really been taught how to take care of themselves. I was raised on a farm by very intelligent, very capable parents that were, master craftspeople, master tradesmen, and knew how to live off the earth. We could sustain ourselves without going to the store, no problem. We made our own cheese, our own bread. We milked our own cows. We slaughtered our own animals. We grew our own produce. So if the whole thing shut down, I'm lucky. I live on 14 acres. We got fruit trees and food and wild animals. I could feed the family if need be. But most people have no options, and they have no idea where to go or what to do. So when people like that get scared, they start acting irrationally. And you see, like when all the rioting was going on over the racial tensions, what was really sad was a lot of the people that were doing the looting and the pillaging were actually looting and pillaging their own people. They didn't even realize that they're destroying the businesses and the homes and the properties of people of the same color who they're supposedly fighting to protect. So you see that when people get into a state of irrational behavior, they're at a point where they're dangerous even to themselves. And I think that we really have to start focusing on the things that really matter, that ultimately that we all need, because if we don't get by the biases of belief systems and we don't get by the political biases, and if we don't stop playing this game that we have to stockpile massive arsenals of military and we have to have all this trillions of dollars going into the military, when, you know, if we were to spend $10 billion just to rehabilitate the soil and the waterways, it would transform the world overnight. But we'll spend trillions of dollars on weapons to threaten somebody that hasn't even done it to us yet. So if we don't orient our values toward making the world a community where we all respect each other, love each other, and know that we need to share our resources instead of leveraging people to sell things and put them in harm's way. I mean, how do you relax when you know that 2 billion people on this planet don't have a pot to piss in, they don't have a closet, they don't have a place to call home, they don't have food, and they don't have water? We've got like 2 billion people on this planet that really literally starve and barely make it moment to moment, have bugs in their eyes and in their mouths. That's completely unnecessary. Bill Gates alone could handle that problem. If he really cared about people, he would be distributing resources and setting up a system to protect us so that we had local trade-based economies where we could share food. We have to bring power generation to the locals. We have to bring food supplies back to the locals. We got to bring water supplies to the local. Here's an example of the kind of crap that's going on. My wife came to me the other day and said, Paul, I just got a notification from the water board that anybody in our area that wants to drill a well must do it immediately because Nestle is buying the water rights to our entire water district. And no longer will you be able to drill your own well. They're going to own the water under my land. Nestle's been buying up water wells all over the world, and so the people that own the land can't get their water. That's absolutely illegal. That is absolutely sickening. So here I am having to race to get $50,000 together to beat Nestle to my own water. This is absolute crap. And unfortunately, the only people that can change it are us. And people are scared of these big powers, but really there's probably only about 300 or 400 of these people at the top of that pyramid, but there's billions of us down below. So it's just a question of, look, if Gandhi could take over the British government non-violently by himself, by just getting the people to move together as a unit, when we all realize what we're losing and who's profiting and who's controlling us, it's really just a matter of us all saying, okay, we're not going to stand up for that anymore. And we got to be willing to sacrifice. We might have to go without food and water for a while we go through the sort of the turmoil of, you know, storming buildings and saying, look, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to keep feeding these corporations. I tell people all the time, your vote doesn't mean anything. Haven't you been paying attention to politics? It's the choice of which devil do you want, right? You get the choice between devil A and devil B, but you're screwed either way. The only way that you can vote is with your wallet. If you want to starve out large corporations, stop buying Roundup. Stop buying chemicals that are dangerous to the environment. Stop putting foods in the hands of corporations that are torturing the soil, and focus on buying organic food and biodynamic food so your money is actually investment in the planet. Stop spending money in any company that's not earth-friendly or sustainable and put pressure on them to become earth-friendly and sustainable. But one of the big problems we have is our overall humanity is still relatively immature. I would say really, especially Americans, I'd say that if you took each country or take the world population and said each human being is a cell and a being, I would say we're going through puberty right now. We have a lot of power, a lot of dangerous powers, and a lot of dangerous technologies, but we're kind of like 14 or 15-year-old boys that have an erection that's so strong they can't think straight, and they just go crazy tearing stuff up and doing anything to try to get laid. When in reality, if we don't start growing up and looking at the realities of what we're creating and how we're misusing these powers, And paradoxically, the same powers we're using to destroy ourselves, we can use very effectively to cure the planet. We can use internet connection to share information, to save each other, or we can use it to manipulate and destroy each other. We can use the media to lie and manipulate, or we can use the media as a network system to educate people on what they need to do to live better and heal the planet. We can use the military to fight for real threats, not manufactured threats. We should be tasking soldiers with planting trees, taking the military corps of engineers and doing soil sampling and water testing. Look, they figured out how to desalinate water for submarines. There's obviously a lot of technology. They know how to make nuclear weapons and destroy the world. I'd say you better start figuring out how to fix the world, or even your game comes to an end. So my point is, if we use the very technologies and the very powers that are being used to destroy and confuse the planet and people, and we bring those into alignment with a common goal and objective, that we have to make the world a safe place for everybody, or the children of tomorrow have no future and neither do we, and we'll just be the sixth mass extinction. And Edward O. Wilson warned about this a long time ago, and Janet Carlson wrote Silent Spring in like 1970 or something, warning that we were creating a chemical catastrophe, and nobody listened to her. They thought she was crazy. So I think we're really in a very special time, because we're going through the equivalent of a manhood or a womanhood ceremony in a Native American tribe, where you either learn to stay focused on what really matters and support your tribe in the face of death, because if you don't, you're not useful to the tribe or you die. And so we're all having to go through a manhood and a womanhood trial right now to get clear on what's worth fighting for and what's not worth fighting for, what's important, what's unimportant. And we have to learn that right now, more than ever, we need each other. And the last thing we should be doing is starting racial wars and, toxic men and toxic women. Those are all distractions from the major issues. The fact that those things are even being talked about shows you how completely lost and confused the values of people are.
Yeah, no, it's been interesting to see the kind of true colors of various people and institutions that have come out when you put people through stress, and to see who's kind of going to make it through that ritual. For people that are listening that, maybe are some of the ones you described that grew up with horrible educations about health and wellness and fitness, but are nodding their head thinking, you know what, Paul is right. I don't know what I'm doing. I thought sugar was healthy. I'm addicted to it. How do they start that journey? Especially someone who doesn't even know what to do. It's one thing for someone to come to you and to say, okay, I'm trying to eat better, but I know you can teach me how. But what about someone who doesn't know where to start?
Well, it's a great question. That's exactly why I wrote my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. That's why I created my online holistic lifestyle coach level 1 training program that people can do from anywhere in the world, because it teaches you everything I taught on how to eat, move, and be healthy and more, but shows you how to apply it. That's the unique thing. But really, to handle that very issue, I developed an overarching philosophical system to carry what I teach, because it takes 7 years, even for a medical doctor, to complete my training. There's a year and a half of training in holistic lifestyle coaching, 4 years of training in corrective and high performance exercise and the psyche, a year and a half of training in my personal, professional, spiritual success mastery program, which is how to use your mind to create what you really want and be a healthy, contributing human being. That takes most people 7 years to do. But because there's so much information, and a lot of the even most senior and most intelligent and most educated people said, Paul, I've learned so much, but I have a hard time because I gather so much data. I don't know which is the most important. It's like I'm flooded with information, and most people have so many problems, I don't know where to start. And so they kept asking me, how do you figure that out? And I said, after about the 10th time people said that to me, I thought, okay, I better wake up and pay attention here, because I'm not that smart if I create an education system that's so advanced that nobody can apply it effectively. So I went into deep meditation, and I spent a couple of months asking my soul to guide me to how to synthesize this down. And so what I ultimately created was what I call the 4-doctor system. So I basically have a book. It's a multimedia ebook called The Last 4 Doctors You'll Ever Need, How to Get Healthy Now. And so what my soul, which is the consciousness within me, so if you get rid of the sense of ego and just connect into the depth of yourselves, the wholeness of yourselves, which includes the universe, we are everything. When you get silent and your head stops speaking, you start listening, you find out you get the answers from somewhere magical. That's called intuition, right? Intuition doesn't work if your mind is working, because it can't get the message through. So this is why meditation is so important. But what my soul said to me was, Paul, first of all, my soul said, study this course on herbology. And it was so interesting because my soul took me into this closet that I have that's full of university courses. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of stuff I've studied. I've been doing this for 36 years and I'm a serious student, you know. So my soul guides me to this one little audio program on 2 CDs that was a herbology course from about 1989. And I've already studied it. I'm like, you want me to study that again? Yes. So I'm in the gym lifting weights, and all of a sudden the presenter says, the Romans had a belief that if anyone got sick, it was because one of 3 doctors was out of balance: Dr. Happy, Dr. Diet, or Dr. Quiet. And it hit me like a lightning bolt. And I said, except the Romans weren't sedentary people. So they would have, now we need Dr. Movement. And so with my depth of knowledge, it only took that one trigger plus the addition. And also the number 4, numerologically speaking, is the number of wholeness. We have winter, spring, summer, and fall, 4 seasons. You know, you have, if you look at how the mind works, you have thesis, an idea.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website, londonreal.tv, or click the link in the description below.